Berlin, August 12, 1961. The city breathed its last free breath. At cafes in Kreuzberg, students debated philosophy. In Prenzlauer Berg, couples danced to jazz records. No one knew that by dawn, barbed wire would snake through streets, families would be split, and a wall would rise, not of stone, but of fear. In a narrow shop near Alexanderplatz, Hans Hartung polished the face of a 19th-century pocket watch. He was 53, a widower, and had repaired clocks since 1932. His shop was unremarkable, dusty glass cases, ticking pendulums, the smell of oil and brass. But Hans had a secret: his back window overlooked a Stasi barracks. And for weeks, he'd been counting. Trucks arriving at 2 a.m. Soldiers unloading coils of wire. Officers marking street maps with red ink. He didn't know why. But he knew it meant something terrible. Hans wasn't a spy. He'd refused to join the Nazi Party in 143. He'd hidden a Jewish neighbor in his cellar in 44. After the war, he just wanted peace. But peace in East Berlin meant silence. And silence, he'd learned, was complicity. On the evening of August 12, he saw something new: field radios, rolls of concrete mix, and stacks of pre-cut steel beams. A young officer dropped a clipboard. Hans, pretending to sweep the alley, glimpsed a schedule. Operation, Anti-Tunnel. Phase 1, Wire Barrier, start, 1 o'clock, August 13. His hands trembled. He memorized every line. That night, instead of closing his shop, he walked west, past checkpoints, past patrols, carrying only a small toolkit and a folded slip of paper in his sock. He reached West Berlin just before midnight. At a phone booth near Zoo Station, he called Der Tagesspiegel. The editor laughed. "Another crank," he muttered. But Hans insisted, "Tell Peter Jenkins. Say, the watchmaker from Alexanderplatz has the time." Jenkins, a British correspondent, remembered Hans from a 1959 interview about time under dictatorship. Skeptical but curious, he met him in a dimly lit pub. Hans handed him the schedule. Jenkins checked the details against known Stasi vehicle patterns. It matched. By 3 a.m., the information was on its way to Bonn and London. At 1 a.m. on August 13, East German troops rolled out barbed wire along the sector border. But this time, the West was ready. Cameras were positioned. Diplomats stood by. Radio broadcasts interrupted normal programming with live updates. Khrushchev had hoped for a fait accompli, a wall built before anyone could react. Instead, the world watched in real time. Protests erupted. Kennedy condemned the act. The U.S. reinforced its garrison in West Berlin. None of it would have happened so swiftly without Hans's slip of paper. Yet by dawn, Hans was back in his shop, polishing a cuckoo clock, as if nothing had changed. The Stasi suspected a leak. They interrogated clerks, radio operators, even janitors. But no one thought to question the quiet watchmaker whose shop faced their barracks. To them, he was invisible, just another relic of old Berlin. Hans never spoke of it. Not to his apprentice. Not to his sister in Dresden. He simply kept repairing watches, each tick a silent defiance. Years later, he told a friend, "Time doesn't lie. It only waits for someone to read it." In 1989, as the wall fell, Hans stood among the crowds at Brandenburg Gate. A young man asked, "Were you here in 61? Hans nodded. "I measured the hour it began." The man hugged him, tears in his eyes. Hans patted his back gently, then walked home alone. He never sought recognition. But in his ledger, under August 13, 1961, he'd written one word. Witness. After the wall fell, Hans donated his shop's ledger to the Berlin City Museum. For years, it sat in storage, just another artifact of divided Berlin. But in 2008, a historian noticed the entry for August 13, 1961, not just witness, but tiny pencil notations in the margin, vehicle counts, unit numbers, shift changes. All matching Stasi deployment logs later declassified. The museum contacted British journalist Peter Jenkins. In his memoirs, published in 2010, he wrote, "The man who gave us the schedule never asked for anything. Not money. Not asylum. Just that the world know what time it was." Hans had died in 1995. But his precision lived on. In 2011, the German Federal Archives released file MFS-JXX/1961-08-13, detailing the anti-tunnel operation. Among the redacted names, one phrase stood out. Source: Uhrmacher, Watchmaker, provided accurate timing data. Credibility: confirmed. No photo. No full name. But historians cross-referenced with Jenkins' notes and the museum ledger. The evidence was overwhelming. Hans Hartung was finally recognized, not as a hero, but as the man who gave time its moral weight. Hans never left East Berlin. He repaired watches for Stasi officers, Soviet diplomats, and ordinary citizens alike. To all, he was just the watchmaker. But those who knew him said he'd always pause when setting a new timepiece. Time isn't just minutes, he'd say. It's memory. And memory must be exact. In 1975, a young apprentice asked why he never fled west. Hans pointed to a broken clock on the wall. "Someone has to keep time here. Or they'll forget what freedom sounds like." Today, historians agree, Hans's leak accelerated Western response by 6 to 8 hours. That window allowed journalists to document the wall's construction from the first hour, denied East Germany the element of surprise, and galvanized global opinion before Khrushchev could consolidate control. Without it, the crisis might have escalated into direct confrontation, especially given U.S. tanks were already on high alert. Hans didn't carry a gun. He carried a pocket watch and a pencil. And with them, he measured the moment history could still be changed. In 2015, the Berlin Senate installed a small brass plaque outside his former shop. Here worked Hans Hartung, 1908 to 1995, who in silence preserved truth when lies built walls. Tourists often miss it. It's no larger than a wristwatch face. But those who find it stop. They listen. And for a moment, they hear the ticking, not of a clock, but of conscience. Hans Hartung's story reminds us. Tyranny doesn't just build walls of concrete. It builds walls of silence. And sometimes, the most radical act is not to shout, but to note the exact time the silence began. And ensure someone else can hear it. As he wrote in his final ledger entry, days before his death. They thought time was theirs to control. But time belongs to those who measure it honestly. And sometimes, that's enough.